today is all about looking back at the Sony PlayStation 1, and we're really going to dig into the history of the console and answer the question, does it make sense to purchase a PlayStation 1 and collect for it in 2021? What are we drinking today?
We're drinking the extra pale Rolling Rock.
It's Bad Beer Month, folks. You know the drill. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell icon so you never miss one of our bi-weekly uploads. And sit back, relax, pour yourself a beer if you care to, and let's talk about the PlayStation 1. Does it make sense to purchase and collect right now in 2021? Stay tuned.
Off the grid.
In North America on September 9th, 1995, the Sony PlayStation entered folks' homes. It was the new horse in the console race. That's a tall order.
Yeah, Sony's first console going up against Nintendo and Sega.
Yeah.
What are they thinking? I think initially they were thinking, hey, we're going to work with Nintendo.
And I think maybe even possibly Sega. I can't remember exactly, but they were looking for somebody to get into bed with, and they're like, fine, if you want to get into bed with me, I will take care of matters myself. Yeah, and I'll make my own console. Crazy thing is the PlayStation 1 retailed originally for $299.99, which back then, that's a lot of freaking money.
That's a lot of money. But then in May 1996, it actually dropped $100. I don't know if they were just trying to get more people to buy it.
Oh, they knew Nintendo was coming, and they were trying to get ready. You know, it did very, very well. For this generation, it literally cleaned the clock of every other console it was up against. Now, the main ones we're going to focus on that it was up against would be the N64 and the Sega Saturn, because those were kind of the main horses in the race. And those two sales combined didn't even equate to half of what Sony sold. It was north of 100 million.
That's insane. For being your first console on the scene and doing that well, that is insane.
Yeah, there was something about it at the time, and those of you that were, way into gaming back then, and I was, there was something so cool about the Sony PlayStation. Honestly, one of my favorite startup menus of all time. Oh, it felt so edgy, something about the grit of the graphics, and it was, cutting edge at the time. Now you go back to it and it's kind of like, ooh, but it was a big deal. Sony PlayStation was a freaking hammer. Their first console, they came out with a freaking bang. What type of nostalgia do you have for the console? Because I think for collectors, if you're looking to get into anything in 2021, a lot of times that is driven by nostalgia. It's a powerful drug.
So I don't have that much nostalgia of having it. My stepdad had a PS1, because I was born like a year before it came out, so I was way young. But my stepdad had one. I remember playing it. I remember getting Star Wars Jedi Power Battles for it, and I know it's not console exclusive, but I played it. I love that game. I don't remember what else I played on it. I think I had a couple other games, but that's it. Then I got a PS2, and I never touched it again. Like, it was cool because it was what we had until I got something better,
Yeah, and it kind of has a similar spot in my nostalgic heart and my nostalgia berries that Sega Genesis does, because my friend up the street, Eric, he was the kid with Sega Channel. He had a Genesis, then he got a Saturn, then he got a PlayStation 1, and I remember when he got everything. Oh yeah, his mom just got him whatever the fuck he wanted. It was pretty crazy, but I distinctly remember him having demo discs, and it was really awesome. And he had one of the Twisted Metal games. I gotta think it was Twisted Metal 1, but at the time I didn't know. And I freaking loved that game. We played the hell out of that game together. But it was not really controlling us all the way because he still had the Saturn and the Genesis. And to me, I was still wanting to play both those consoles as well. But I was really enamored with it. And then probably by 1998, 99-ish, probably 98, my good friend Dan, we're like best friends growing up, he got a PlayStation.
Ooh.
And he had Game Day 99.
Oh, sports.
Loved that game. And he had Driver, and then he ended up ultimately getting Driver 2. And he had the Gran Turismo game. And we played the hell out of that. He had Siphon Filter. I remember he had that game. But Game Day we played a lot, and I'll never forget, like, if you juked too much or spun too much, your guy'd grab his hamstring and kind of run like an asshole. And if you just spammed those moves, that's what would happen. I think it's if their stamina got too low. But I've got good memories around it, but I didn't own my own PS1 until probably maybe 2000-ish, because my uncle, who was, let's just say he was falling on some hard times, he sold one to me, and I remember I got it with just one controller and disc 1 of Metal Gear Solid.
Not even disc 2.
No. And I beat it in one, because I didn't have a memory card. So I beat it in one sitting, and I had to call my friend and leave my PlayStation on until his mom could bring him over and bring me discs 2. And then I finished the game. No saves.
Yikes.
So there's a lot of PlayStation games I like, but it's definitely not a super nostalgic console. And
No.
probably, and we'll get into more, maybe more reasons why we're not huge collectors of it. And honestly, I'm not that knowledgeable about the PlayStation. When I like it, and I remember some things about it, but not like I do the other stuff we've covered.
Yeah, I only really played it for like a year, and then I got a PS2, and then an N64, and then I had an NES as well.
And you never look back.
And I never. It's one of those consoles that, like, I appreciate what it did in the moment because it was Sony's first console.
Yeah.
But I barely go back to it, even nowadays.
But at the time, the leap, like, it played real video.
Oh, and that
games.
was back then. That was really
Which,
cool.
it's fun to go back to because it's kind of annoying now because usually games that do that, there's a lot of load
A
time.
lot of load times, and the video doesn't look the greatest. But
Yeah, but I remember NBA Jam. There was like a legit, like, rendered, like, halftime show. Now, after you've seen it a few times, it's like, I don't really want to see it because I just want to button through it, and you can't. And then, like, a lot of the sports games, like Game Day 99, they had that, like, pre-intro rolling.
which is a really cool
Yeah,
intro.
it is. And the sound quality. I mean, it was just...
big leap from that 16-bit era
You go from chip tunes to, like, real freaking...
to like real songs.
Yeah, at the time, it was like, okay, I'm all about this. Yeah, technology, exponential growth, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, in North America, so if you're looking into purchasing a PlayStation 1 and you want original hardware, the core gray console, I think the one everybody really thinks of, and there are some variants within that. I believe the first model came out with AV plugs, like actual outboard AV
Whoa, really?
Outputs, and then it went into that Sony exclusive plug, which they ended up ultimately using on the PlayStation 2 and on the PS3. But that original one, so a little bit different if you want to get to the nitty-gritty of form factor, but for the main form factor, for the longest time, it was the core gray console.
Just simple.
I don't know, and I've never seen with my own eyeballs different variants. I just
There
don't
probably
recall.
is
I'm
out
guessing.
there, but I don't know.
For some reason, I think I've seen an all-black one, but I could be making that up.
that'd be actually really sweet.
But then, late in its life cycle, it released it was the PS1, one spelled out, and it was a miniature console. And it was white, and we do have one of those.
Dude, I love it. It's like, I call it the PS Junior.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
a little flip-up screen.
Yeah.
It's so sweet.
And the screen, I don't remember at the time if you had to buy the screen separate, if they sold it all packed in together. But we do have one that works with the screen, and it's really freaking cool. I believe it came with a car adapter. Maybe you had to buy that extra. In the comments, let us know. I'm just talking from pure memory. Didn't want to get online and look up all this stuff. I'm just going off of the wrist, but I remember all those things, and I feel like it came out right around when the PS2 came out. Like it's like a cheaper model or whatever.
Which, I don't understand why you would want to get that.
I love the look of it.
I mean, but in like practicality and using it,
Well, I mean, the main reason is you could play it on the go, and I know that seems bulky and clunky now, but at the time,
Yeah, it's true.
little
It's kind of
console,
like-
pop-up screen, cigarette lighter plug, bam, you were gaming in the car, and that was
that's
cool.
true. But I don't know anyone that had one.
Yeah, I know my buddy had one, but he never used it in the car that I can recall. I think he just thought it was cool. But yeah, if the question is, would you play on that screen if you weren't in a vehicle? No, not if you had a TV. That would be stupid. But I thought it was a pretty cool
It's kind of
variant.
innovative, yeah.
Cool enough that I own one. I got it at a garage sale, super cheap, and it has a little rattle in the screen, but it works really good.
It works.
Yeah.
So that's all that matters.
Console accessories, from my memory, we're probably going to miss a ton of third-party stuff, but I distinctly remember the light gun, the gun con.
Yes, and we have one of them.
We have one for Time Crisis, which we just started collecting. We're going to go for a full light gun set on the PlayStation 1. I remember that, and I also remember an arcade stick, and I can't remember who made that. It might have been Namco, but my buddy had that because he was way into Tekken.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was a Namco fight stick, and then I also think there was an official Sony one. I don't know if Sony actually put it out, but it looks like the PlayStation 1. Like, it has that gray, and it has the Sony branding on it, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I only remember seeing like one with yellow buttons is the one I remember seeing. Then they had the multi-branchment system. See?
Ooh.
Multi-branchment.
Branchment. So
Multi-tap.
tap.
Is that Spanish? Branchment?
I don't know.
I don't know. But the multi-tap which we have this. I don't really know why though. There are a few
Complete
games
in box. Yeah,
that take
I've
advantage of
never
this, but
played a 4-player PS1 game.
no, we use the hell out of the PS2 one, and I know there are 4-player games that utilize this. Obviously, they wouldn't have made it if there wasn't. It's one of those things I remember. I don't remember playing with it or it being super useful. Where like the next generation, it was way useful.
So handy.
But aside from that, the controller. I don't know if you guys remember, but the controller originally released and there was no joysticks.
Yeah, it was just the D-pad.
Just the D-pad, very slim center. And at the time, I was like, this is a pretty cool controller. But then they changed the game, and it was a much needed change when they released the DualShock.
Oh.
You really need for 3D games.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's so much harder if you don't have a joystick.
Yeah, so in 2 of them, to be exact, because, there's a lot of things when you go back, those tank controls, controlling those games that were developed solely around a D-pad, they are goofy.
They're rough.
Like, do you remember so many games, I can't even name them all, that you walk like in the direction, the perspective changes, but you still press up to go.
And it's like, it's kind of confusing.
It's a nightmare.
And then, obviously, memory cards.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know why, but I'm so nostalgic for memory cards. Especially on the PS2. I did have one, and I still have my original from my PS1. I guess it was my stepdad's that I stole. But it's just, I love going back and looking like, oh, dude, our save state's on there, or like clips.
Yeah.
That it's so sweet.
Well, do you remember just recently when we did, was it a Royal Rumble episode? I had my save file on SmackDown vs. Raw 07, and it had like the date of my last save that I unlocked everything. And it's just like that memory of
It's just like, oh, I remember when I saved that. Obviously, that wasn't on the PS1.
No. But it's just cool that was a thing. And, I still have Madden replays saved from like Madden 04 and 05. Like, it's crazy to go back and look at that stuff. Again, PlayStation 2 talk, but just how cool memory cards were. They were a big deal at the time. And you could take stuff over to a friend's house, which I think
It was so easy.
is kind of maybe something that isn't available now. Like, there was a benefit to that.
It's not really, well, I guess people don't really go over to people's houses anymore. They just play online.
Yeah,
So-
but it was fun to, like, if a friend was playing Resident Evil and you're like, oh, let's play on my save file. I've already beat it and I've got this or that, or I'm at this part and you've never made it that far. Let's
Yeah,
start
and
there.
you just literally plug it in and load it, boom.
Yeah.
Super easy. I will say that I love what they did for the PS2 because they had the memory card slot, but the PS1 games and the jewel cases, yikes.
Oh, jewel cases suck ass.
Dude,
They
finding jewel cases that are still in good shape in 2021, good luck.
They're a collector's nightmare. They really are. Best thing I can say is it's a lot easier to find CDs that aren't dicked up and replace. Just replace.
It's the same thing.
It's all I can offer you. Make sure the spine matches the type of spine you're going for. But other than that, they're just a pain in the nuts, and that goes for the Dreamcast as well.
Yeah, I am not a fan of jewel cases, man. It's just terrible. And
Me neither.
I get like back in the day, it was probably a cheap option.
Dude, but speaking of CDs, and I know, this has pretty much no use in 2021. Except for the visualizer.
Yes.
But at the time, the Sony PlayStation could play, I said at the time, it still can.
Yeah.
It can play CDs.
Which was, back in the day, was awesome. And then the visualizer.
It's so cool.
Dude, I remember when I was a kid, I would put CDs on and just watch the visualizer
Yeah.
because I felt like I was at a nightclub.
Hashtag Robert in a nightclub. In the comment section below, who would pay to see Robert in a frickin' nightclub? I'd pay a lot.
Yeah,
something.
I
It's
don't know
cool.
why I've always liked those things going. Like, first off, we need to just do that in here because we listen to CDs a lot.
We're gonna do that right
Yeah,
now.
but I remember, this is getting way off the freaking rails, but I remember like when iTunes came out, and it might still have it, there was a visualizer. And I remember in college,
yes.
I'd get kind of the lights down and play video games, but I'd have my laptop up and that going
It's
on.
just vibes,
So I've
bro.
always liked it. Yeah, it's like kind of like my own personal music video on my PlayStation 1 that plays CDs.
And video games.
Yeah.
I will say, if you're trying to try this at home, you got to make sure you have a later version of the PlayStation 1. The first 2 models do not offer it because they didn't have the visualizer setting installed. But if you have a later model and you press select, the visualizer starts, and then you can customize it in there, which is even cooler. You can go up and down on the D-pad to increase and decrease the speed. You go left and right and cycle through the different visualizers, which there's a lot of really cool ones. And then like circle and triangle and square, you can like change like the motion blur and change the colors. You can do so much on the PS1 with the visualizer. It's just so cool. And it's probably my favorite feature of the PS1. hands down.
And let's not forget, in the realm of jewel cases, originally they had long boxes
Ooh,
for
yes.
games, which I've only got one, but it's badass. I've got the WrestleMania arcade game long box. For whatever reason, this game's not even that expensive, not even the long box variant, but I love this thing. Like, I am so nostalgic for this game.
Kind of makes me think of like big box PC games.
Yeah.
And then isn't there like some wooden big box ones, or like it has like the weird grooves? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And we've sold a few. We actually
really cool.
we found 2 recently, like in the last couple months.
And they're just not nostalgic for the games, but they're just cool to see.
What was it? Descent and Triple Play Baseball or
Yeah.
something like that? Yeah. Those were like the original ones, I believe. And then I think they're maybe this, and then I don't know. Again, we're going off just memories from our past. And you guys are probably going to blow us up and be like, well, you're not an expert. We're definitely not experts on the PlayStation 1. But we do know what games we like.
Yes.
And we've started in these buying guides and kind of taking people through the history of consoles and helping you determine as a collector, is it worth collecting in 2021? We've added in starting to talk about our top 10 games because we've never done those as like standalone episodes for the most part.
We might initially, and this list we literally made up right before we filmed.
Yeah.
We were just looking at our collection going, so it's really quick.
Yeah.
So if we forgot a game, who cares? It's just our list.
Number 10, a Capcom game. We have the arcade Final Fight arcade 1-up, which has Strider on it, and Strider 2 on the PlayStation 1 is a banger.
It's an expensive game.
Yeah, it's
and
north
we
of a hundy.
Don't own it,
No.
but we will
Yeah.
get it. It's
Yep.
sweet.
We have ways to play it and have, but we don't own it, but we really want the physical copy. Love that game. Love Strider. I like Strider on almost every console. I know people prefer it on either, one console versus the other, even back to like the retro days, Genesis, NES. I love Strider, period. Just love Strider.
It's such a cool game.
Beautiful. Number 9.
Number 9, Driver 2.
You could get out of your freaking car.
Yeah, which is so cool.
I know it seems primitive comparing it, or now that like Grand Theft Auto's out, but when Driver 2 came out and you could get out of your car, groundbreaking.
Yeah, because you always stop playing the first one. Man, what if I could get out? Or what if
And now you can.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, well, yeah.
To a certain extent.
Yeah, you wish you could do all the stuff you could do in Grand Theft Auto, but Driver's still really fun. You gotta kind of, I feel like you almost had to be a fan of it back in the day, but it is a game when you go back to it, you're like, the driving's pretty good.
Yep.
Game's pretty fun. Missions are pretty fun. I've got a soft spot in my heart for Driver 2.
Moving on to number 8, Time Crisis. I know technically it's an arcade game, but it is on the PS1.
Yeah, port.
And we had the big box light gun for it. I love it.
Yeah, I do
love
too.
It's so sweet.
Light guns games, just in general, they're so fun to play co-op. That's just kind of a mindless get in, get out type of deal. You don't have to invest a lot of
You
time.
can drink beer while you're doing it.
Yeah, I don't know when killing dinosaurs became not cool, but number 7 on the list is Dino Crisis. Insert 1 or 2 here. I've never really played the third one, but from what I hear, there's not a reason to. But 1 and 2 was blown away by. 2 differs quite a bit from the form factor or the formula of 1, but Dino Crisis.
Dude, I would love if they brought back the series or remastered it. I think that'd be really sweet.
It'd be insane.
Like I don't know why they're not, because Jurassic Park is still big in 2021, I guess.
Like video games just kind of got away from the dinosaur thing, and you had Turok thriving, you had Dino Crisis thriving, and now there's like, well, we know Resident Evil makes money. Come on, Capcom, I think some people will be all over Dino Crisis. That's a number 7 pick.
Number 6, horror fans rejoice. The original, Silent Hill. Wow.
Love Silent Hill. This is actually the only survival horror entry, well, kind of, on this list, and we're not dropping a hot Carl on Resident Evil.
No, it's
But I would rather play now after everything's passed. I love 1, 2, and 3. Who doesn't? I'd rather play them either the remakes, or ultimately I'd probably rather play them on the GameCube.
Yeah.
So, in hindsight, if it was like isolated to 1990s, I would put them on this list. But now, not so much. Silent Hill's still great.
It's a beautiful game. Then moving on to number 5. I did have this game for the PS1 when I was a kid, and that was Spyro the Dragon. It's such a great, family kid game, even though it's not a kid game.
And you like collectathons.
Oh, dude, I love it.
Yeah.
Dude, I'd spend hours, and I love the freaking remake of all 3 of them. It's just a sweet game. I love it.
I can't remember. I think it was the first one I found recently. I have it listed right now. And I used that to test the PS1 that I found. That game still plays really good.
Yeah.
Like, the original still plays great. And I've played the remake, which is cool too. but the original plays great, and so does its subsequent releases on the PS1. That's a good entry. And you got a little Spyro up above you, man. He's your boy.
I freaking love Spyro.
Yeah.
Moving on to number 4, I love shmups as well. R-Type Delta.
One of my biggest gaming regrets was trading this. I didn't know. At the time,
What did you trade it for?
I loved the game. I don't remember what I traded it for.
What?
I want to say some Super Nintendo games or something like that. But at the time I traded it, it was available as a digital download on the PS3. And then by the time I remembered I wanted to play it again, it wasn't there no more. But R-Type Delta is amazing. We do have it on our PS1 Classic Edition. Somehow it's on there. I don't know how.
Yeah, I don't
but
know.
love that game. Love our shooters. It's one of the best R-Types in the series. R-Type Delta. You know we love our shooters.
It's a beautiful game. Moving on to number 3, Parasite Eve.
Except after Steve.
Ooh, yes, that's what I would say.
Yeah. So this is the other one that's maybe kind of horror-esque. I love this game. I've never played the freaking second one, but I love Parasite Eve. It's one of those PlayStation 1 games in with the next two, maybe even R-Type Delta, that I go back and play on the reg. I love Parasite Eve. It's a great game.
We found that hunting, last summer?
Yeah, we did. I got the Japanese PlayStation Classic Edition because I was like, oh, Parasite Eve's on there. I don't know how to read Japanese. So.
Someone didn't think it all the way through. I mean, the gameplay's still the same.
You don't know what you're doing. So anyway, that game's, you got to know the story. Number 2.
Number 2.
This was kind of a fight.
So number 2 and number 1 can be flip-flopped.
Yeah.
We made this list super quick, so we're just going to go with it. Number 2, Metal Gear Solid. Oh my god. 2-discer. So innovative because there's codes on the back of the box. You've got to put the controller and slot two.
That freaking Psycho Manus boss fight is one of the best boss fights of all time. This game looks
genius.
rough, but still to this day plays amazing. Maybe it's because I'm so used to it, but I love Metal Gear Solid. I do like what they did with the Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes on the GameCube, but there's something about that first one, and we beat it together.
Yes.
I want to say numerous times because Disc 2 was having a hard time reading.
We beat the final boss so many times because it would glitch after we beat him. It sucked.
But then finally, we let it sit one time, and 20 minutes later,
It started moving again.
we're like, oh, hey, let's beat it.
I will say, if you've never played it, you're going to jump in and go, yikes, it looks rough, but once you start playing it, that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
You get stuck into the story. But moving on to our number 1 pick, this game still looks beautiful, still plays beautiful. It might be my favorite in the whole series, and that's Symphony of the Night.
Yeah.
Beautiful freaking game.
If you're a Castlevania fan and you haven't played it, I don't know what to say. We did trade away our copy recently
we
to a
did.
friend that really wanted to play through the game, but we got a Dino Crisis in return, so all is good. I will own a physical copy of this again, but I had one for so freaking long that it was like, you know what? I got a buddy who's a big Castlevania fan, happens to be Megadan29, and I was like, I've had this long enough. He's going to enjoy it. But it is one of the games that I think still looks amazing to this day. If you go through this list and you're thinking, stuff from this era, I don't love the look, go to Strider 2, R-Type Delta, and this game, because they do not rely on three-dimensional and the polygon type of stuff.
Those are games that still look beautiful.
Yeah, they're all 2D type of deals.
I mean, this era just in general kind of struggles with that, but I get it, they were trying. And I know there's a ton of games that we didn't talk about, that we didn't mention. I know Crash Bandicoot came out during this time period. I'd rather play that on the PS2. There's a lot of RPGs and JRPGs and all that stuff. Final Fantasy VII, I think.
Yep.
It's just not on our list because we don't have nostalgia for it. And
well, Final Fantasy VII, I do. I love that game a lot. But I kind of make this list, and the way I think about these, and maybe it's worth explaining, is this is kind of how my mind is today. And what I would want to go back to and play again.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy doesn't get into that. And honestly, it's not that we hate RPGs. I used to love them. With a channel that puts out 2 episodes a week, live streams on Sundays, full-time job that I'm working 65, 70 hours a week at, and an eBay store.
We don't have time.
I can't just dive into RPGs anymore.
Even though it's not an RPG, but I feel like the way you're playing MLB The Show is like it's an RPG.
Yeah, probably. But I already got one grinder that I'm working on. So, but anyway, love those games. But that's our top 10.
Yep.
So let's answer the question of the episode. Is it worth purchasing, or should one look into purchasing or collecting for the PlayStation 1 in 2021? The console. really cheap, dirt cheap.
Yeah.
You find them out there. I just got one in the bundle for $50 with an N64. So those are kind of anomalies. But I wouldn't pay more than $25 to $40 for a PlayStation 1. Just wouldn't do it. It's a very cheap console. Reliability is actually pretty high on it as well, given the age of the disc drive.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just a pop open top, so
Yeah.
there's not a lot of sliding parts, so that could be why.
Yep.
The expensive part is the games.
Yep.
I mean, okay, there are some super dirt cheap games that aren't the best. But a lot of the games that are in our top 10 list are expensive.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, like Driver 2, you can snipe that one pretty cheap. Spyro, you can snipe pretty cheap. But even like Metal Gear Solid, which sold a ton of copies, is starting to get up there. I wouldn't say it's an expensive game, but if you look it up, it's kind of like, I didn't expect it to be that much. So there's still, and if you're like into arcade sports, you can still get NFL Blitz super cheap.
Oh, yep.
There's still some like the wrestling games like In Your House and WrestleMania Arcade aren't too bad, which I like those, but they're both arcade style wrestling
Warzone.
games. Yeah, it's kind of
Yikes. They're rough.
yeah. So overall, I would say it's fairly easy to collect for, but it's a matter, do you want to play these games? Are you nostalgic for these games? And are you a person who likes to play on original hardware?
Yes.
Because that is why the PS1 is so cheap.
And I feel like the PS1, you don't need to play the games on original hardware like you would like on NES and stuff like that.
No.
There's not, if you play them through hacks or ROMs, you're still gonna get the same experience. You might have to use a different controller. Obviously, you can play with backwards compatibility nowadays with the PS3 and the PS2.
Yeah. I think that's the reason the console is so cheap, is
because,
if you have a PS2, you can play literally every PS1 game. If you have a PS3, you can play damn near every PS1 game, and with an HDMI output, which
you play it on a new TV.
For a lot of people don't have CRTs like old, retro heads like us. So that's why the console's so cheap. So it's super affordable. I would say yes, buy a console if you're an original hardware fanatic or junkie. Yes. No, if you're like, I just want to play the games. If you just want to play the games, you've probably got another console that can play the games. And it's not really worth having a PS1 to take up space, because you can play them on your PS2 or your PS3. And then you already mentioned, playing other ways, ROMs and hacks.
Yeah, the PS1 Mini is out there, which
it was rough.
But you can get that for dirt cheap.
You can salvage it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was $20 at one point, which is insane because they retailed for $100.
Yep.
And you can hack it if you know how to do that. Not saying that we know how to do that, but we do. So there's a lot of ways to play the games.
We've already alluded to how there's so many different ways to play the games, and if you're not a physical media collector, obviously there's emulation.
Yep.
But if you do have the discs, we've already mentioned you can play them on the PS2 and the PS3. But speaking of the PS3, which you guys know the store was going to close, and then somebody's like, whoa, don't hate us, we'll keep the store open.
Which means it will probably close eventually.
At some point, tons of PS1 games. And there's not very many to speak of that you can get just as far as downloading on the PS4. But the PS3, pretty cheap games if you just want to play them.
Yeah, you can get a lot of really expensive games, like physically, that are super cheap on the PS3.
It's great value there. Again, if you're just wanting to experience a few games and you're not a crazy media collector like people like us, it's a good option. There's just so many ways to play the games, and if you're not super nostalgic for them, do you really need them physically?
Yeah.
That's your call, but we want to make sure you knew that option's available. And I think a lot of those you can play on the Vita as well.
Which is really cool, remote play.
Handheld.
I think for us in 2021, the PS1 is kind of like a middle-of-the-road console to collect for. For the time, it was really groundbreaking and revolutionary, but it's just kind of lackluster nowadays.
I mean, at the time it was killer.
Yeah, super sweet.
But there's not a ton of nostalgia for either of us, which for us drives a lot of our collecting. We don't fire it up very much. We have a fistful of games we really, really like, but the PlayStation 1, the console itself, is one of our least played consoles.
Yeah, it's just kind of on display.
We don't buy a ton of PS1 games. And not to crap on the PS1, but I think for you and me, it's kind of just this generation. Like, we're super into the 8-bit, 16-bit era stuff, and then we tend to be into that 6th gen stuff and beyond. It's weird, this 32-bit, 64-bit era. It just, for the most part, with some outliers, and there's some games we really love, it just doesn't really do it for us. Just don't tend to collect for it and go back to it a ton. So I think you gotta read your own mail. If you love this generation and you're super nostalgic for it, it's a far lower barrier of entry to collect for, in my opinion, than the N64 and the Sega Saturn.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're like, I love that era, I was hardcore into gaming, I want to play a ton of games, PS1's probably where you want to be, because N64 and Saturn stuff's getting stupid.
It's so expensive.
And there are PS1 games, as you've mentioned, that are really expensive, but for the most part, I would say PS1 tends to be a easier waters to navigate in the collecting scene. For us, I would say the console answer for us in 2021 is no. And then the games is like, outside of our top 10, I could live with never getting another PlayStation 1 game.
Yeah, because we barely play it. It's just, if you have nostalgia for it, then go out and do it. If you don't, there's not much reason to do it.
It's not one we would like say, yes, you really need to. It's console, probably not. Games, that's kind of where we're at with it.
Yep. PS1.
Yeah.
Speaking of let's move on to Bad Beer Month review. Rolling Rock.
Yeah.
Extra pale. I don't know why they say that on the bottle.
I don't. It's because it's just about as clear as piss. This is a beer I thought that we weren't really going to enjoy because we used to play at a club in Ames, Iowa, and this was the free band beer.
Oh, they had a fridge full of it.
I think that stuff stayed in the fridge a long time because it was always super skunky. This could be just because this is our first beer of the day.
Yep. After work beer.
But I don't hate it.
Mine's almost gone.
Yeah.
Like it's a nice. There's not much flavor. It's a nice, easy drinker. There is a slight skunkiness to it.
Yeah.
But it's not like it's not like a Heineken skunky.
No. And this is like the third or fourth one of these bad beer reviews we've done. Whole month of July we're doing that. This is my least favorite that we've done thus far.
Yes.
But it's not bad. This
No.
is, if I go over to a buddy's house, he's putting some burgers on the grill and he's like, hey, you want a Rolling Rock, son? I'm like, oh, you damn right. It's okay. It's okay.
I don't think we will ever buy this again.
Probably not.
Because this is the first time we've had it in years.
Yeah.
And we only bought it for Bad Beer Month. But it's
okay. There's just not much here.
Yeah, it's simple.
Yeah.
Just like the PS1.
Yeah.
It's just simple.
Yeah, and there's a lot of PS1 fans out there, and if that's you, that's awesome. Do your thing. Everyone's nostalgia and taste in gaming, it all
different,
varies. That's just kind of our opinion. You know, we're in a game room, we've got nearly 30 consoles hooked up, and it's just being honest, we don't play our PS1 much. That being said, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, we fire up probably annually.
It's such a sweet
Metal Gear Solid, probably annually. So there are games that we will always want to have in our collection, and we've even mentioned a couple that we've either traded away or whatever that we still want to pick up. We're not heavy PS1 collectors in 2021, and it's hard to really go out there, especially when there's so much other low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
To say, yep, now's the time on the PS1. I don't think now's the time. I don't think the ship has sailed or the window is closed. You just got to do you, but we don't stamp it with that GOTG seal of approval. That's just how we feel about it.
Yep. I'd much rather play the PS2.
Yeah. Or
Nostalgia.
PS3.
Or PS4.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, we always appreciate you tuning in, subscribing to the channel, and we'll see you next time right here on Gaming Off the Grid. Can you move that fucking tennis ball
What?
out of the frame? All right.
So it is.
On top of the Rolling Rock bottle. Today is all about the... I think we got it, yeah.
Boom.
Boom da. That's my Tourette's. Boom da. No. Bing a ding ding. I'm about to hot call somebody. Doo, 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 doo. Oh, it's me, it's me. Delivering Alabama Hot Pockets to you and me.
Should we
It's a
try
sniff.
this? Oh, that's gonna be terrible.
It's been a while, man. Been a couple years. You know, it's not fair to probably even judge any beer when it's your first beer of the day.
True.
Because then it's just
Because this
like,
is actually like
yeah, Not bad.
For being the first one of the day.
Yeah, and usually this comes off a bit more skunky, but this must be fresh. This is a fresh pile. That horse on the bottle just laid a fresh pile, dude.
I mean, it's still a little skunk. That's for sure.
Skunky monkey. Hey! If you wanna fucking puke, sniff my butt. Gotta keep them separated.